So right now we're going to work on this trig practice worksheet. The first thing that I want you to look at is when we're trying to find the 6 trig function values. We're going to first plot this point. So let's just do a rough estimate. We'll say -3 is over here, up 9, so you'll do a little dot. Okay, that's step 1. Then next we're going to draw a line to that point, and we're going to create a right triangle. We will then call this angle theta. So if the left side is x, right side is 9, we know that this is -3, this is +9, and we're going to have to use Pythagorean theorem to find this value. So when we do Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, we will end up with a c value of square root of 90, which simplifies to 3√10. So I'm now going to set up all of my values: sine, cosine, tan. I'm going to do the reciprocals: cosecant, secant, and I'm going to do cotan. I'm then going to see which ones I know should be positive. So if we're in the second quadrant and it's all students take calc, in the second quadrant only sine and cosecant are positive. So let's show over here that sine and cosecant are positive, so the rest are negative. So now we're going to do our ratio. If we know the hypotenuse is 3 square root 10, and we know catoa, we know that sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so opposite is 9 over the hypotenuse 3√10. I'm now going to do cos. Cos is adjacent, -3 over the hypotenuse 3√10. I'm then going to do tan, tan-toa. So the ratio, I'm going to do opposite over the adjacent. Then when I do the reciprocals, I just flip and I'll simplify last. So now I have 3√10 over 9. I'll have 3√10 over -3. And I'll have -3 over 9. And when we simplify, we can divide those guys by 3. We will get 3 over square root 10. And then we have to rationalize the denominator by multiplying by root 10, square root 10 over square root 10. So we get 3√10 over 10. That is the value for sine of theta. When we simplify cosecant, these both divide by 3, so we get square root of 10 over 3. Then for cos theta, these guys cancel. When we multiply by root 10 over root 10, we're going to get negative square root 10 over 10. Now over here, these guys cancel, so we have negative square root 10. And right here, we get -1/3. And over here, we get -3. Sorry, it's a little bit messy. It's my first time doing this. So let's make sure our signs are accurate. Second quadrant, sine and cosecant are positive. So sine is positive, cosecant is positive. All the rest should be negative, which they are, so check, we did this one right. Now if you look at number 2, I already did the work for us. But just as a reminder, it's like the first one. All students take calc. When you set this up, we see that our triangle is in quadrant 4, meaning cos and secant are positive. And when you do all of your ratios and simplify it, you should get these answers over here. So now for this next one, for number 3, it said that the sine of theta is greater than 0, and it says cotan of theta is less than 0. And it says, what quadrant are we in? So here we know that sine has to be positive. Sine is only positive in this quadrant, and this quadrant. All are positive here, sine is positive here. So we've narrowed it down to these two quadrants. Now cotan, they're saying, needs to be negative. So out of the two that I've narrowed it down to, where's cotan negative? Not in quadrant 1. So we're working with quadrant 2 is our answer. Okay, so number 4, it said secant is positive and cosecant is negative. So all students take calc. If secant is the reciprocal of cosine and we need to be positive, then secant is positive here and here. So we've narrowed it down to these two quadrants. If cosecant is the reciprocal of sine and we want it to be negative, it can't be first quadrant, so our answer has to be in quadrant 4. So now for number 5, it says that the sine of theta is equal to 3 over 5. And it says a restraint, theta is between pi and pi over 2, which is 90 degrees and 180 degrees. So if sine is positive, and we know all students take calc, sine ratio has to be in one of these two. But if we've got to be between 90 and 180, we know that we've got to be working in quadrant 2. So now I'm going to set up my triangle in the second quadrant. And if sine, is opposite over hypotenuse, the opposite of theta is going to be 3. The hypotenuse is 5. When you do the Pythagorean theorem, you will get that this value right over here is going to be 4. However, because it's to the left of the origin, we're going to say negative 4. So now that we have the sides of our triangle, we can find the other trig values.
What'd you do?
So now to find the remaining trig values, we're going to do sine, theta, cos, theta, tan, theta, fraction, fraction, fraction. Reciprocals, cosecant, secant, cotan. So then, we're already given sine, so that's 3/5. So over here, you can just flip it, 5/3. Cosine, so ca.
Yes.
Adjacent over hypotenuse. So the adjacent is negative 4, hypotenuse is 5. We'll flip. The tan, toa, is opposite over adjacent. So the opposite is 3 over the adjacent, negative 4. We flip, and there we go. That one's done. Check. Okay, so number 6 is the same, so I'm just going to show you quickly. So then finally I did the rest of the work for you, but you see based on the restrictions that if secant is negative, secant goes with cos. So cos will only be negative in the second and third quadrant. Then the last restriction says that sine is negative, meaning that it's got to be quadrant 3 that we're working in. Then from there, we do all of our ratios, and here are your answers. So then to do number 7, basically you're doing the same stuff. Cos, if it's negative, has to be in quadrant 2 or 3. And then the cosecant, if that's negative, it means that it can't be in quadrant 2. Therefore, the only one left with both restraints has to be third quadrant. So then we draw the triangle in the third quadrant, and we know that that TOA, tan is over A, so cotan is A over O. So then we just write that in, we rationalize the denominator, and then this is our value, and let's make sure that it should be positive. So if all students take calc, in quadrant 3, tan and cotan are positive, so our answer is right. So these next ones are actually kind of easy. So for cos of pi, all that you're doing is you're trying to see where pi is on the unit circle. So pi is right here, and the ordered pair associated with that is -1, 0. X, y, cos, sine. Cos is on the left, so the value is -1. Okay, now for this next one, for number 9. we first have to find 3 pi over 2. So 3 pi over 2 is right in here. That ordered pair is 0, negative 1, x, y, or cosine. But we want to work with sine and cosine. So then I think, okay, cosecant goes with sine. They're reciprocals of each other. So if sine is negative 1, then the reciprocal is still going to be negative 1. So that's the value, cosecant 3 pi over 2. So number 10 is the same thing as the last two, cotan of 2 pi. So first figure out where 2 pi is. 2 pi is right here. It's 360 degrees at 1, 0. So x, y, cosine. So now it says cotan. We know that cotan is the reciprocal of tan, and tan is sine over cos. So cotan is going to be cos over sine. And if we look over here, the cos value is 1 over sine 0, so it's undefined because you can't have 0 in the denominator. Okay, so the last two aren't that bad. So for number 11, it says, what's the cos of negative 225 degrees? Now you should be able to do this without a unit circle. So what we're going to do is we are going to rotate in the clockwise direction because this is the negative direction. So here we hit negative 90. So we're at negative 180. Up here would be negative 270 if we're going this way. So we know that negative 225 is somewhere in here. Okay, so then I did a little work. So I know that we're in between negative 180 and negative 270. I drew my triangle, and then when you look at your triangle, you're asking yourself, okay, if this is negative 180, negative 225, where is it? Okay, well, 180 to 225, there's a 45 degree separation. So we know that this angle right here is 45 degrees. If we don't have a unit circle, let's use the hand trick. So 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers. Okay, so this is 30 degrees, this is 45 degrees. So if this finger goes down, cos is on the left. So we have square root of 2 all over 2. But then because it's in the second quadrant, we need to ask ourselves, is it positive or negative? So to the left is negative, up is positive, so it's going to have a negative value. So it's negative square root of 2 over 2. Okay, so this last one's a little harder. So we first need to figure out where 16 pi over 3 is. So I like to break it up and write it as 5 pi plus a third pi. Now, one loop around is 2 pi. If I do another loop around, now I'm at 4 pi. And if I do half a loop, I'm at pi. And then if I add a little bit more, I add that additional pi over 3 value, and that's where I'm going to stop. So I'm looking at this triangle right in here, and we're using our reference angles. So we know that pi over 3 is equal to 60 degrees. So that means that the reference angle on the inside is 60 degrees. So let's just think about 60 degrees with a hand trick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 60 degrees is right here. Now tan is sine over cos. So sine is on the right. It's square root of 3 over 2 all over cos is on the left. So square root of. So sine is on the right, so you have square root of 3 over 2 divided by cos is on the left, so square root of 1 over 2, or 1/2. So then we simplify, we have square root of 3 over 2 times the reciprocal, which is square root of 3. We just need to think, is it positive or negative based on the quadrant? So if all students take calc and we're looking for tan is positive down here. So it's positive square root 3.